Hello friends, we are here today in Hebrews chapter 11. I love this chapter, and it's a very famous chapter. Some may call this chapter the Hall of Faith. It begins talking about what is faith. You know, it says here that faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things unseen. I feel like we often glaze over this idea, you know, this definition that it's giving us. You know, what does it mean? The assurance of things hoped for. The way I see it is that is kind of an overarching faith. You know, I believe that there is a God in heaven, and He created the world, and He created everything, and someday when I die, I'm going to be with Him, and I also believe that when I'm with Him, it's gonna be great. So I have that assurance. I have that assurance of things that I hope for. But then there's this other thing. I have this conviction of things that are unseen. That is to say that because I know that there's a God who's a judge and who loves me, there's different ways that I'm supposed to act. You know, it's unseen to know why I might do something. But if I know that God is asking me to do something, I can say, yeah, I will do this. That is my conviction. It is the conviction of the things unseen. So the first part, you know, the assurance of things hoped for, it involves everything, but the conviction of things unseen, that points to individuals doing the things that they're called to do by God. And then He gives us a list of people who did extraordinary things because they were convicted by God to do these things. You know, it says, by faith we believe. And I think this is interesting because this one's not having to do with a person. It's just something that we all believe. You know, by faith we believe that God created the universe. You know, nobody was there to see it. but we believe that God created all things through faith. It's interesting that, you know, we call this into question here at the University of Michigan. You know, they call this into question because they don't have any faith, but they also don't realize that what they're believing is also by faith. So it starts off with Abel. It says that by faith, Abel was able to offer a better sacrifice. You know, Cain offered like grains and fruits, but Abel offered these animal sacrifices. And it's not because it was the animal sacrifice, it was because he had faith, and God saw his attitude as something that was good to him. And so it was counted to him as faith, and it was counted as something that God really appreciated. So the next it mentions is Enoch. There's not really a big story of Enoch, but we know from the genealogies in the Old Testament that Enoch was a special case, because in every other person in the genealogy, it will say, you know, this person lasted this long and then they died. You know, it might mention how many kids they had. You know, they lasted this long and then they died. But Enoch, it says, Enoch didn't die. He was taken up. There is no date of death. You know, there's no span of life because he just went to be with the Lord. And what the writer here is saying is that because of his faith, he went to be with the Lord. And he never saw death. By faith, Noah was able to make this big ark. You know, that was the conviction of the things unseen. He didn't know for sure that this rain was going to come. In fact, everybody around him said, we don't believe this is going to happen. But by faith, he made an ark and saved himself and the whole family. And then there's a couple here for Abraham. You know, Abraham ended up leaving everything that he knew and went to a new land. And by faith, Sarah, his wife, was able to conceive a child at the age of 90. You know, a promised child. And by faith, even though they knew that this child was the promise that they were waiting for, God asked Abraham to offer him up. And so by faith, he was able to do this. He was able to do it knowing that God had a plan, because God had already promised that this was what he was going to do, that he was going to carry on through the line through Isaac. So it says by faith, Jacob was able to bless all of his sons in different ways, but he blessed both of the sons of Joseph. He blessed both of the sons of Joseph. They're leading the way to Moses coming about. Now there's 3 mentions of faith by Moses. First of all, he was even born and lived, even though they were killing all the babies, because there was too many Jewish babies being born in Egypt at that time. But by faith, the parents left the baby alive so that they couldn't be found. And then by faith, he decided to live his life as a Hebrew, even though he didn't have to. He could have lived in the lap of luxury for the rest of his life, but he wanted to be identified with his people, and so he stepped down and he lived the life of one of the slave people. And then by faith, he was able to get everybody out of Egypt. By faith, he was able to bring the Passover about so that they could all be brought out of captivity. And by faith, he was able to bring people across the Red Sea. Not only that, they get to Jericho, and by faith, the walls of Jericho came down. And not only that, but by faith, Rahab was able to be saved from the city of Jericho. Even though she was a prostitute, she was found to have faith, and it was counted to her as righteousness. And so she, I think this one's in particular wonderful, because Rahab is in the line of Jesus. She, even though she was a woman of, we'll say, ill repute, God blessed her more than anybody else at that time, because she had faith, even though she was an outsider. I think this should speak to us. This is a gold mine of a story there. But by faith, she was able to be brought out. He kind of ends these individual stories, and he's like, I'm only talking about the beginning of the Bible. So far in these stories, we've only talked about, Genesis and Exodus, maybe Numbers and Joshua. That's that's a small portion of the Old Testament. And so he writes this list. I wrote it down. He's like, I'm not even talking about Gideon and Babak and Jephthah and Samson and David and Samuel and the prophets. All these people, plus the people surrounding them. There's so much faith, and there's so much wonderful things that these people did through faith. So how this chapter ends, it talks about how these people had this faith, but they don't have the assurance that we should have. We have more reason to have faith because we have seen the fulfillments of all of the things mentioned in the Old Testament. Essentially, they died not seeing the risen Christ, but they're like, the writer of the Hebrews here is saying, but you see it. You see the fulfillment. So they were able to do these wonderful things through faith, and yet we get back to the heart of the book. There's Hebrew Christians that are going back to their Judaism, and he is saying, by faith, these people were able to do these wonderful things, and you, of very little faith, have seen the promise that these people were waiting for, and you're not accepting it. You're not living by faith. Now, this is true of everybody watching this video. We have the New Testament. We have the Old Testament. We have everything we need to have the assurance of the things unseen. So that is Hebrews chapter 11. Have a great day. Bye.